All right, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about ISK making in 2023, kind of what my recommendations are for what activities you should be doing if you want to maximize your profits. And I'm going to cover ratting, I'm going to cover mining and exploration and everything. Anything that hasn't really changed a whole lot, or I don't regularly, or it's more inaccessible, I guess you could say. It's things like Poshvin and like wormhole space. The rat sites in wormhole space are pretty much if you can find them, the loot and everything, the ISK income is really consistent. So if you're living in wormhole space, pretty much nothing has changed for you for the most part. And then in Poshman, right, it's still be more the same, right? You just, grinding, all that stuff out there that you normally do. But I'm going to try to target this more for normal space, for people living in like null, low, and in high sec. And that way, there's a little bit more accessibility when it comes to the information. Just as like a general rule for me, I usually don't do unrateds, or I don't try to focus on unrateds. Unrateds end up being like kind of low on the ISK, and they just have really crap loot. If I do run them at all, it'll be like just to clear SIGs for the most part. But if you are starving for content, run vigils. Just run the top end for your area. So vigils, annex, and then dread grease to fleet staging. But for the most part, these are just kind of a waste of time and kind of filler content. You might get a little out of it, but not too much. You'd be better off just farming escalations. And speaking of escalations, that's exactly what I usually do. Is, for instance, if I'm running in high sec, right, I'm gonna run dens. I'm gonna run dens in like a cruiser or something like that. I'm just gonna do them ad nauseum, because dens are going to end up escalating into 5 of 10s, and these are really quick to run as well. And the 5 of 10s are decent income actually when you consider competition and availability. But 18th tier overseer effects, that's about 42 million on Jita, with other stuff that can drop as well. So the main focus in ratting and high sec would be just to like farm these 5 of 10s. That would be my biggest recommendation there. As far as low sec, there's a lot of crossover with low sec and null, because what I normally recommend is running ports and hubs when you're farming escalations. Ports are going to get you your 7 of 10, and then hubs are going to get you your 8 of 10. And then if you're not really having a whole lot of luck here, havens and sanctums are still awesome to do. You can spam sanctums, you can spam havens, and you're going to make killer on the ticks and everything. So those are going to really help you kind of pick up things. And you can get an escalation for the maze, but the maze can be kind of annoying at times to run. But I just try to focus on ports and hubs, mainly because one of the biggest money makers I have is just the deity rateds. I mean, Pith Penal Complex, the 8 of 10s end up having really high bounty payouts. So I've pulled, they don't even take that long to run. You can blitz them too. But I've had 700 combined 700 mil come out of a single Pith Penal Complex. And that was between modules, the overseer effects, and post ESS and everything like that, because the overseer effect on this one is around 80 mil, and then you can get rattlesnake BPC, and which isn't really worth all that much anymore, but Pith B modules and things like that. But this Euresa's military operations complex, I've always had really good luck with loot here. It doesn't really occur as much as the Pith Penal Complex. It might occur more in like low sec, but in null, I rarely ever see it. But 20th tier, about 61 million. But you can get like Dread Grease's modules, you can get Gila, Rattlesnake BPCs, and Pith C stuff. I've legit pulled like a bill, not including the overseer effects, out of the final commander on this. So when I see these pop up, they're usually a high priority on my list, because I know they're going to usually have a high amount of loot in them. And other than that, I mean, that's usually what I do. I recommend just like farming escalations in those different tiers. That's kind of the tried and true way. If you're really new, like you're alpha new, another thing you can do too is you can actually farm hideaways. Hideaways have one of like the highest the highest commander spawn rates. Obviously, the loot's not worth a whole lot, but if you just go in here and you run these hideaways, and that like Dread Garista comes out, you grab his faction ammo, his faction mods that he drops, and then you salvage him, because you'll get enhanced salvage when you salvage it. So that's another good thing if you're like super new. You can just like farm hideaways, and then look for that Dread Garista or that commander, and just loot him and and salvage his wreck. Let's go over mining real quick. Mining has been a roller coaster over the past like 12 months, but we'll cover just really kind of briefly like the different like null, low, high security, what you should be doing each area, what can kind of get you more as far as like time efficiency. High sec, I mean, you're going to do great like doing like Veldspar. You can fit a lot of Veldspar into like your mining ships because there's a really low cubic meter. But really, if you really want to maximize your profits, get into moon mining. If you can do any sort of moon mining in high sec with compression and how it is now, it's so easy. Before, moon mining was kind of weird because there was no compression for it, so it was like a pain to move around. But now that you can compress moon ore, it's one of the higher valued things you can do in high sec as far as mining goes. If you can find gas sites, cool, right? And if you can like actually get around the weird extortion of ice, then you can mine ice as well. But I would say you get into moon mining because that's going to be a lot more consistent for you. Low security, pretty much all of the ore is still very highly valuable because there's just like a very little amount of people actually like, as in the grand scheme of things, there's less like low sec ore being like shoved back into like high sec markets. So pretty much all this stuff is, some of this stuff is outdated though, but pretty much anything you can mine in low security is going to do you really well. As far as null sec, Mercoxis is still going to be your biggest one by far, and then other than that, it's like you're just doing like R32s, R64 moon mining is going to be the highest there, and then some ice. Ice is really still kind of depreciated for the most part, so if you mine ice just in purpose of selling it, I wouldn't sell the compressed. The best thing to do with like ice is just go out and farm what I call the faction ice. So like your pristine white glaze, basically the ice that gets you to the isotopes. You mine the ice, you refine it, and you just sell the topes, because the topes end up having higher value than the actual compressed ice itself, and you have all the other byproducts to do whatever you want with, whether it is to run your siege modules, triage modules, whatever. As far as wormhole goes, still the same. Poshman mining can be really good because you can go out there and get Rakavine. Rakavine is still pretty good. I remember mining that in high sec back during the wars. But then Spudmane. Spudmane is one of the biggest things that I usually go out to Poshman for. It can be a little weird to set up and kind of dangerous, but Spudmane is a really good commodity if you can manage to export it out of there. I was also doing quite a bit of just regular asteroid mining with the Porpoise the other night, and the rocks are a lot bigger than when I mined in high sec last. So I ended up getting quite a bit of value without actually like having to change rocks with drones too much. So there's still some value in like getting Plag and Veld and stuff like that if you're not quite up to that level. So really it's just about like kind of like stockpiling. If you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, just stockpile that ore and just wait for a good price. Wait for the market to kind of look good for you and you'll be fine. Last thing we're going to cover is exploration. Now, there's not a whole lot to be said about this. I mean, you're already going to be scanning for like DED sites and stuff, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing data relics no matter where you're at. It's just really good money. But the best thing I can tell you is in nullsec, your relic sites are going to be by far, your relic and covert sites are going to be by far the best things you can do. Data sites have the lower amount of like value, but I still do them to clear them, basically clear the SIGs. But if you go into high sec, it ends up being that data sites are actually better in high sec. But so if you come into a system and you scan down a data in a relic site, prioritize the data site in high sec. Whereas in like null sec, you want to like prioritize that relic site. And then if you have absolutely nothing else to do and you're just kind of finishing up your scanning routine, clear the data site. You can get I one time in an entire like all of last month I pulled like 40 million. No, it wasn't even that. I think I pulled 20 million out of a data site, and that's the highest I'd ever done. And I've done hundreds of data sites, but I did end up using all that as filaments and all this other stuff for like invention if you're doing industry and stuff like that. So it's easy. You can save money if you're doing like industry, but I don't like data sites in nullsec, but in high sec they're one of the better ones, right? Covert sites are a little weird because the way covert sites work is when you warp, you want to warp in cloaked, and the second you uncloak, a timer starts, and they don't tell you. But essentially, what happens is after about 2 minutes, rats will come in, and you gotta get off grid. Also, if you fail any of the 4 hack containers, everything will blow up, and you'll probably lose your ship. I have been able to tank the explosion with the Tengu, but the Tengu moves really slow, and it doesn't have as many bonuses like a Covert Ops or like an Astro does. So normally what I tell people when they do covered sites is the best thing to do is when you warp in, cloaked, look at the 4 cans and figure out which one is named differently than the other 3. I usually hack that one. I take my time, I hack that one, and when I get it successfully hacked, I just warp off. If it's in a situation where I need to clear the SIG and I don't necessarily have the ship, or I just don't want to clear it, I'll just warp in, start the timer, and warp off, and the SIG will clear itself. But most of the time, if you just go in there and clear one of the containers, you're going to make probably like 40 to 50 million. So it's a really quick one scan, income. It's really good. But relic sites in nullsec are just insane. I pulled, I've done like one morning last month I did like 3 relic sites and ended up pulling like over 200 million. And if you do relic sites all day and null, you can clear like a bill in a day. It's insane. But as far, and I guess the last thing I'll cover a little bit is just I guess new player ISK making, because most of the things I've talked about in this video aren't really accessible to like if you're brand new. But what I will tell you is you're gonna have a lot of competition in HiSec when it comes to doing most rat sites, most data relic sites, because there's just a lot of people in HiSec. But the best thing you can do as a new player is do the career missions and just missioning. Really, as an alpha, you can go up to doing like level 3 missions, so getting in a really good ship and kind of spamming those, and then doing some of the anomalies just to kind of like get a little bit of income as well. But by far, if you have the time and you get really good at hacking, you can day 0 get into a Heron and start doing data sites in HiSec, and you can pull upwards to 2 million from just data sites. And if you do like basically if you do like 1 data site an hour, you're still doing better than probably 95% of the other alphas at your level as far as income goes. And if you've played for any amount of time, you know that when you're an alpha, the income is just horrid. You can basically make as more ISK in a single data site than you would if you ran like 3 level 3 security missions or something. So just keep that in mind. There's not a whole lot of options when you have low skills. It's just one of the things about Eve. The more skills you get, the more things open up for you. But don't get in a hurry, as a new player and everything like that. And even if you aren't a new player, try to stick to a routine that works, and just get into that consistency and save, save for that Titan or whatever you're saving for. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Figured I'd just cover kind of like my ideas on making ISK this year, and let me know in the comments about what your resolution is or what you're trying to accomplish in Eve this year, and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.